By the time we were ready to move, I had found a 2-bedroom apartment in the city that we lived in, and there was very limited options with the realtors looking, me looking, friends looking. The condo that we had originally found that we ended up losing because of the house sale was really a miracle. But we ended up finding this apartment, and the second bedroom was more like an office space. It was pretty tiny, and I was not sure how William was going to take it, but we ended up going there, and William was pretty upset. I didn't think he was really going to mind because we were really never home that much anyways. We're always out doing stuff, and coming through all of this, it was like, it's only a temporary thing, you guys. We have to do this in stages. And it was, I think, that very next day, and I was going to sign the lease at this apartment, a call from this other place, and I recognized the voice, and I asked her if this was Ashley, and she said yeah. And she was the former assistant of my best friend Missy from the property that she manages in that same city. And I had passed the orchard many times in Brunswick. It was directly across from Mapleside, which is like a fall festival place, and Apple, and they have a kids' little park there, and beautiful property in apple groves, and they do all kinds of fun stuff in the fall and concerts in the summer, and it's pretty historical for watching sunsets and stuff. It's one of my most favorite places in Northeast Ohio, so I was super excited to go look at it. And she had a 3-bedroom condo. I was like, wow, okay. It was beautiful. It is beautiful. I ended up deciding to pay my rent for an entire year. I wrote them, I think with the first month and last month's deposit, it was, I want to say maybe about $34,000. Got caught up for probably 3 or 4 months on all of my bills, just to give myself enough of a head start with continuing to secure clients and getting my business going, and just getting everything up and going and settling in. When you talk about manifesting and co-creating with God, for me, it's like God knows what's in your heart. God knows the things that you love and the things that bring you joy and peace and happiness. And this place really was perfect for the 3 of us. It had everything that I could have wanted. And the location was amazing too. And everybody in that community seemed super nice. And I was just very excited. It was just a very peaceful, great little gift and blessing from God for getting through all of those obstacles and nightmares. It felt like I just came out of truly like a triathlon of spiritual warfare. And I was just really still so excited. When you do the work and you heal and you start to see your reality be a reflection of the work that you've done, it's such an amazing experience. And you can't help but to acknowledge that it is a reward from God that you're on the right track and just to keep going. Transitioned my social media and started to formulate our marketing strategy. I saw like an increase in sort of negative comments, I guess would be the best way that I could describe it. Very negative, or more, especially through Facebook and Instagram, borderlining on like soliciting, and just people being very direct. My messaging away from like diet and just physical wellness into, emotional healing, spiritual healing, and also sharing my personal journey, my personal testimony that reflect in terms of what I'm giving to the world through marketing and social media and branding and my image. I still wanted that to be very much an organic reflection of the changes that I had gone through. And I really was excited about the way that a lot of things were coming together. And, it was very important to me to have any marketing that I did was very authentic. It wasn't like I intentionally didn't want to do like a polished platform, but I wanted it to be very natural. And my my gifts to this world are not forced. They're not planned. They're not really strategized even. Obviously, having a business plan and a model and understanding how I can connect with clients and the way in which I want to work with people. But, it's so important for me that I give myself and I allow for the very natural and true deliverance of messages and of healing and of guidance. And I understood that was going to be a little bit difficult in the world of business and social media and branding and marketing. I had already talked to several people, influencers and some people who had taken a different sort of path. But, Robin, who I was working with, was very well versed and experienced in that. She gave me great feedback. And I sort of took it all in. I was open to hearing about what the options were and what the best way of going was. But ultimately, I was going to stick to my original plan and the plan that God had already given to me. It's like I already had a blueprint. But there's so much of social media and content creation that has become more about selling and the influence and the ego and money and the appearance of and shiny things. And I think a lot of those people aren't successful because of, some of the reasons I previously stated, as far as integrating, understanding, and truly going through the process of the walk with God, but also because it's very easy when you do enter into the spiritual arena of content creation or ministry, nonprofit, charitable, whatever. It's such a fine line with ego. And that is something actually that I help people with, especially in the spiritual, religious communities and all of that, because a lot of times, especially if they grew up in that type of culture, they really don't have the perception of the rest of the world, because it's so easy to come away from connection and community and the true essence of what it is that we're meant to do to serve God and to use our voices and our platforms to serve humanity or whatever. And so I really just wanted to be very careful on that, but I was very excited about the way that it was coming together, despite the fact that I was starting to get, some harassment and backlash and all of that. I had originally planned for my daughter to finish high school at Strongsville High School. She was about halfway through her 11th grade year. She was a candidate for the National Honor Society. And my daughter had really owned her experience in high school and her education. She was excited she was going to get to go to cosmetology for the vocational school. And we were all very excited. She was very motivated, and she had a job in a nursing home at night. She was doing great. She really was doing great. And it's so interesting, too, the efforts that people put into when their family goes through times of trial and turbulence. And it's almost like there's just this constant, even it's very subtle and subconscious, blaming and separation even more in arguments and all of this. And if for nothing else, in terms of my relationship with my daughter, the biggest takeaway was that it really never had anything to do with changing her. It had more to do with changing me. And as you do that, when you're willing to do that and you allow God to do that and invite God to be a part of your family, and things go so much easier. They really do. And your kids pick up on that too. And their respect for you grows because they're going to see you putting in the work. It's like they end up coming up to the same frequency that you're on. And so I was very excited about that. And having gone through all the experiences that we did, having a good amount of time of honoring my own needs and setting up very clear boundaries with people in my life. And it was just an exciting time. And for my daughter, she was probably in one of the better positions that she has been in since maybe she was an infant, in terms of like the healthy way of functioning and the flowing of our family. And it's just, we had better days, we had happy days, we had more peace than we had trials at that point. And then I got contacted by my son's elementary school, and I had intended after the Christmas break for the first year that we were in, and then I got contacted by my son's elementary school, and they had a call put in from an anonymous person that we had moved, and I let them know that we did move. We moved to the next city over, which was probably about 2 miles away from my son's elementary school and about half a mile away from my daughter's high school. And I let them know that I was going to have my son finish out that quarter, and then he was going to be moving to the elementary school. And they weren't good with that. They wanted him transferred right away. And naturally, we were a little disappointed about that. We felt like that it lacked a little compassion, but at this point, I wanted to move through any other struggles just with as much ease as possible. Once my son found out that my friend Missy, her son, was going to the same elementary school, he's my son's best friend. He's just a grade younger than him. He got much more excited and motivated to switch schools. So that was something really positive. And he did great. He was very nervous with his first day in a new school, but he did really good. He acclimated really well. Not long after that, then I got contacted by the Board of Education regarding my daughter. Said that she could not continue to attend the high school if I didn't pay the tuition. Well, what is the tuition? And it was about $12,000 for the school year for a public school. $12,000. Well, my daughter ended up coming home early that day, and she said she wasn't going to work. And I said, why not? She was really upset. And I found out that they had pulled her into the counselor's office at her high school and had started to grill her about us not living in the district anymore. They never notified me that they were doing that. I could not believe it. My daughter was freaking out. And, I had just found out myself. So I was so shocked. It really was like, this was a high school guidance counselor that did this. And so, of course, I was very disappointed. I felt like that was, a really inappropriate action for them to take, to at least not notify me that they were going to have that conversation with my daughter, or invite me to be a part of the conversation at the high school, since, they called me anyways. It was very strange that they made those calls separately. I thought it was highly inappropriate. I really only had a good experience at Strongsville High School. The vice principal and a couple of my daughter's teachers, first year cosmetology teacher at the vocational school, was very awesome. They all, were advocates for my daughter, her entire high school career, and had helped make some adjustments to help her navigate her ADHD and when she went on medication. They very much were invested. As much as my daughter was invested, they were invested in her education. And I definitely understood that, and hadn't really struggled with communication prior to that. So it was very strange. But when I got contacted by the Board of Education and they informed me that I was going to have to pay a $12,000 tuition, I was like, well, do I have to pay for the whole year now? And they said that they would accept monthly payments, which were going to be, I want to say they were right around $2,500, between $2,500 and $3,000. I can't remember the exact rate now, but I'll probably post some of the pictures, whatever that I have. And I was like, there's no way, we just moved. I'm just now starting my business. There's just absolutely no way I'll be able to keep up with that. Like, I'm a single mom. And so then I did whatever I could. I started researching grants and scholarships. I contacted the Board of Education in Columbus. I made phone calls from 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock at night trying to figure out how I could do this. I did set up a GoFundMe, and we got some donations. People were generous. Her grandmother, her dad's mom, and other people had heard of what was going on, and you know, people were helping. I think we ended up raising like $400 or $500. Contacting the superintendent, I was very taken aback, to say the least, and shocked with his complete and utter lack of empathy. You know, I spoke with him for a while, and I shared with him some of the experiences my daughter had been through and how she had overcome and really invested in her own education. And, you know, my daughter wasn't about like clout or popularity. A lot to her because she was invested in herself, her education. That's something that should be celebrated, especially in a teenager in 11th grade. And having gone from just a year and a half earlier to having some failing grades and really struggling to being a candidate for the National Honor Society, and just the opposite. And I just kept looking. I was like, well, keep going to school. You know, I'll do the best I can for the payments for now, but I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to be able to keep this up. Despite the generosity of the people that did donate to the GoFundMe and my efforts to find any resource that we could to help with this, at least getting through the 11th grade year, because shockingly, if you're a senior and you move out of the district, you can graduate from the high school still. So we were talking about like about a 4-month difference here that they were going to make me pay $12,000 for. Not only that, but they were going to make it be retroactive to the beginning of the school year. It was unbelievable. Yes, there are rules, but if the ultimate goal is a child's education, on a case-by-case basis, is whatever that guideline that you're following, is that in support of a child's education? It was a Friday and my daughter calls me hysterical. And I was like, what's going on? She said I had to come pick her up because they had walked her out of the school and told her that I was late on my payment and that she was not allowed to be on school grounds anymore, and that she was going to be unenrolled from the Strongsville High School in Strongsville, Ohio. I could not believe it. They walked a 17-year-old, not even 17 yet, she hadn't even turned 17, she turned 17 a few weeks later, but out of the high school. Never called me, never contacted me, just walked her out. We worked with Polaris to see if she was going to still be able to attend the vocational school. Went back and forth with them quite a bit, and they said that because she wasn't enrolled in a district that sends kids to that vocational, that she wouldn't be able to attend that, but that they had contacted the vocational school in our county, which was a ways away from where we live, but that they were going to do what they could to make space for her in the first year there for cosmetology. Naturally, my daughter was extremely upset about the whole situation. The silver lining was that her dad actually graduated from Cloverleaf, from that vocational school. And so, you know, that was a little bit of a positive spin that I could put on it. And, you know, she actually did really think that that was cool. She was at least, you know, she found the positivity in that. She's trying to work it out so that she could potentially do the rest of her high school credits. She actually was ahead of her high school. She didn't really have that many high school credits left anyway, so to figure out a way that she could do the high school credits online and then go to the vocational too, or however we could work it out. Everything all set up with transferring her to that school, and the day that we were supposed to go to that school to have her meet with the teachers and get the supplies and show her around so she knew where she was going on her first day, I get a call. My daughter was in the shower. We were getting ready to drive out that way. And they tell me that after reviewing my daughter's records, her transcripts, that she had gotten a failing grade in some, I don't know, English class, whatever it was, from the 9th or 10th grade or something. And I said, there's no way. Like, she wouldn't have been able to go into Polaris, at the other Polaris, And she goes, well, she made up the credit. I said, she did? Then what is the issue? And they said, well, because of that grade, then they're not going to be able to allow her to come admit her into the program here. The day that we were scheduled to go there, Cloverleaf in Medina, Ohio, I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. My daughter went into a tailspin of depression. And shockingly, no one from the Strongsville School District or Brunswick School District contacted me or my daughter besides her vocational teacher to check on her from the first vocational Polaris. None of them. Like, my daughter didn't leave her bedroom for 2 weeks. I had to make an appointment with our family practitioner and have drag my daughter there to get some inspiration and things spoken into. I didn't know what to do for her. And it was just such a rough time. I was doing whatever I could. I started looking into, just the regular cosmetology schools to get a price on those, but because she wasn't 18 yet, she wasn't going to be able to go to just a private college or anything like that. I told her she could just get her GED and whatever she wanted to do, I was willing to support her in it. I couldn't blame her for whatever she was feeling. And I knew it was going to take some time for her to get through that. And I wanted to give her that time. Because what happened to her was very wrong. It was trauma created by school districts that are charged with the advocacy of children. Yes, I had to move out of the city. There was no place for us to go. I am a single mother, and not a single mother who is a deadbeat, but a single mother who put in work and had paid taxes in that city as a homeowner. My daughter went through that entire district since the 3rd grade. It just was shocking to me, the callousness and the coldness, the lack of compassion. And I was fine with her not going back to the school. I was she still was trying to figure out a way that she could go back to the school. And I was when she turned 18, if we got her an apartment in Strongsville, whatever we were thinking we were going to do, we talked over some things. And, like my daughter typically does do when she's in a mad panic, or any teenager would do, she was talking to her friends and talking to people about it. Unbeknownst to me, she had enrolled the help of my mother, grandmother, her dad's mother, was trying to help as well with sharing the GoFundMe, but it created a lot of confusion. Not so much with Connie, Joe's mom, but with my mother and, people saying different things. It was a little bit of a challenge because I myself was very upset about the entire situation. And obviously Melena's very upset, but nobody's living with Melena and what it's like when she's that upset. And of course, William, trying to manage getting him acclimated to the new school. And then I found out that my mother had been contacting and calling the school district and calling the Board of Education, and she wrote a letter. So then I had to intervene and ask my mother to please stop trying to communicate with people. It wasn't necessary, that I had already taken the steps necessary. And see, again, what my mother was doing was saying things that were counterintuitive to what I was saying to my daughter. I still hadn't totally been able to see the full spectrum, the entire landscape of my mother. And I, at the time, wasn't sure if she was doing this intentionally, but what she does is she gives my daughter the impression that I'm not doing what I'm doing. My daughter gets argumentative with me and will start asking questions, and that's where sort of the disrespect kind of creeps in. And so right away, I sent my mom a message and I was like, hey, you know what the boundaries are. You don't need to be getting involved in this. If you would like to pay for the tuition, you can do that. But otherwise, please mind your own business. I am her parent and I am dealing with this. whatever you think you're going to do, you're not going to do. So please